Hi everyone, Professor Bowen here. Just to clear up a couple of things from our week one discussions, we had a lot of exciting discussion about constructionism as it pertains to sexuality. And one of the things that I've got out of our discussion so far is that there seems to be this sense that constructionist positions are anti-gay rights. And some of the examples given in support of that would be, for example, that all of this Russian propaganda about how homosexuality is something that comes from the West and it's a result of immoral societies and their influence on places like Kazakhstan. That's not really a constructionist position, or if it is, it's a bad constructionist position. The reason that I say that is this. Constructionists don't just say that some forms of sexuality are socially constructed. They say that all forms of sexuality are socially constructed. So constructionists would not just say things like, homosexuality is unnatural because it comes from all these cultural influences. Constructionists would also say that heterosexuality is unnatural because it comes from all of these cultural influences. So generally speaking, there's no clear alignment between your philosophical outlook and your personal attitude towards sexuality. There are, within the essentialist camp, some people who are homophobic and some people who are not. And the same with constructionists. Some of them are homophobic and some of them fully support the gay rights platform. To be clear on this, so there's no confusion, we're going to read lots of constructionist opinions over the course of the semester, and all of those are fully in support of full rights, protections, and freedoms for sexual minorities. Constructionists, at least the ones we're reading in class, are fully in favor of more tolerance, more rights, and more freedoms for gay people, and all forms of sexual expression as well. So just to be clear on that, again, there's no clear correlation between being a constructionist or an essentialist and your personal views on homosexuality. Okay, the second thing that I want to talk about real quickly, there were some questions from our discussion about all of the research in the 1990s that was used to support the essentialist position on sexuality. In particular, the twin studies. In the lectures, I mentioned that the results of that research were problematic and that they were criticized from lots of different angles. And you might legitimately ask, well, what exactly were the flaws in the way that research was conducted, and why might it not be as good as evidence in favor of the essentialist position as it seems to be? So I want to start mostly by talking about the twin research from the early 1990s, because that's one of the things that has garnered a lot of critical attention both among scholars and in the media. So the problems with the twin studies research were twofold. If you remember, this research was used to put forward the idea that there is a strong genetic component to sexuality, because the authors who did these studies found that identical twins have a much higher likelihood of both siblings being homosexual than fraternal twins. The comparison was something like 52 to 22%, which was a shocking number, really. And taken at face value, it would seem to suggest that there is a strong genetic component to sexuality. However, there are a couple of things that the researchers overlooked. The first has to do with the way that twins are raised in societies around the world that they were kind of ignorant of. Because identical twins look exactly alike, in lots of cultures all around the world, it is pretty common to treat them the same way, to dress them the same way, and to raise them the same way. We often think it's kind of cute, like if identical twins have the exact same clothing or the exact same hairstyle, which means that a lot of the similarities in the way that twins behave might be because of the fact that they are raised in the exact same way by their parents, and they are treated in the exact same way by those around them. So what this research might have uncovered is not perhaps a genetic factor influencing their sexuality, but a social one that is a result of the way that twins are raised in the world. The second key problem with the twin studies research has to do with something called ascertainment bias. Ascertainment bias is something that happens when the data that you're collecting for your research does not adequately and completely reflect the target group or population that you're studying. When, for example, Bailey and Pritchard did their initial research, you might be wondering, how did they get people to volunteer information about their homosexuality? They went to gay pride festivals and other events that had a strong gay presence, and they asked people if they could talk about the sexuality of their siblings. And ascertainment bias came into effect here because, if you think about it, some gay people have a better relationship with their siblings than others. In particular, gay men who have brothers that are also gay were more likely to want to be part of this study. By comparison, gay men who had straight brothers were more likely to have strained, tense, fraught relationships with those brothers and would not be willing to be part of the study. So that's kind of an example of ascertainment bias in the field. Bailey and Pillard did not get a lot of volunteers among people whose siblings were a different sexual orientation than theirs, because there's a higher likelihood of those relationships being difficult and complicated and of those siblings not wanting to participate. So that skewed the data in really some notable ways. And to their credit, in a follow-up paper published in 1995, Bailey and Pillard actually acknowledged this. They noted that ascertainment bias had skewed their results. They wrote in that paper, quote, "The most likely way in which ascertainment bias would occur is that gay men whose twins were also gay would be more willing to volunteer than gay men with heterosexual twins." So this makes some of the data on twins and the genetics of sexuality somewhat fraught and unreliable. Okay, so hopefully that addressed a lot of the questions that we had coming out of week 1. I'm really looking forward to see what other questions you have as we head into the second week of the semester. But goodbye for now, and thanks.